This is the Blackprint, where being black is always the topic of conversation. The Blackprint is brought to you by Rhymes and Designs and Good Evil Art. Welcome back to the Blackprint. It's your host, MJ. So last segment was about unity or stupidity, and basically it was a conversation about how we can run into issues when we jump into connecting and unifying with these other communities when they haven't fought the necessary battles within their own communities, such as working to rid their communities of anti-blackness. One of the things I spoke about in the last segment was that we should not attempt to unify with other communities when we haven't unified with one another. So that's what we're going to speak on today. Art is joining me again, and we're going to break down the infamous Willie Lynch Letter. And then we're going to discuss current iterations. Art, can you start us off by giving a little summary of the letter?
So the Willie Lynch Letter is basically a speech that was given by a slaver from the West Indies. He came out to Virginia to, I guess, better inform the slavers in America on how to better control their enslaved Africans. There were a lot of uprisings, a lot of insurrections going on at that time. And these slavers were basically looking for methods to maintain their plantation. So supposedly, there's a man named Willie Lynch that came and was to give these people, I guess, instructions on how he was doing things in the Bahamas and how he was maintaining control back there. So he came up with these rules these divisive rules, basically to maintain control. And we're going to break those down a little bit here. So what Willie Lynch supposedly did was develop lines and draw lines across many different areas, whether it be age, old versus young, sex, male versus woman. I mean, it's just different ways that you can divide black people: coarse hair, fine hair. Those things were very pervasive, and of course, the light skin versus dark skin, I guess you want to call field versus house, those type things, just where you were in the whole social strata of things would be a divisive line for you. But one of the key premises that isn't necessarily spoken about from the letter was the distrust that was perpetuated by the slavers. Willie Lynch basically said that they should only trust us, as in the slaver, and not trust each other. So they were to spread distrust through creating these divisive lines. So I first read this letter a long time ago. I was about 16 the first time I read it. I read it again while I was in undergrad, and I actually just read it to prepare for this episode. MJ, when was the last time you read this letter, or the first time you read it, and what do you think about it?
So I've been hearing about this letter basically my whole life, and for many different reasons. But it's usually when people feel like there's a lack of progress in our community, and there's these specific, easily identifiable ways that we're keeping each other back. People are always like, oh, just like the Willie Lynch Letter said. And I often hear people reference the period of time that it was supposed to be able to control our enslaved ancestors. But this is actually the first time I read the letter. I've only heard about the letter and the contents of the letter. I read it for the first time for this segment. And what did I think about the letter? Or the account of the address? To me, it didn't seem that compelling. Honestly, I think that the black community I feel like we're highly critical of each other. And any flaw, any problem is magnified. It's blown up out of proportion. We are, members of the human species. There are going to be factions because even if we are all African, we will be different. We'll have different features, different hair texture, different skin complexions. There's going to be people who have these kinds of intelligences, and there are people who don't have those types of intelligences. It's like, if we're not perfect, whatever the definition of perfect is, then we're super negative about that. We are allowed to have pathologies. We are allowed to have issues. I think even if Willie Lynch didn't exist, if slavery didn't exist, we would still have problems within our community. But I feel like the real big issue is that we trick ourselves into thinking that white people have created those issues and that they control those issues and that they control us. So Art, you told us when you last read the Willie Lynch Letter and the first time you read the Willie Lynch Letter, but what do you think about the letter?
Well, my honest thoughts on it, I felt like there is some truth to it. There are some societal issues that were remarked about and actually come across in real life today. But my real gut feeling about it is someone was basically reporting on a situation that they see, and it was an outside account. It was someone who really doesn't understand Black people's power and Black people's existence in history, and they were basically back architecting off of what they saw today. So like, yeah, you see the divided homes, so let's develop this narrative to show how these divided homes came about. I don't think it was basically society, Black society, built off of this letter. That's how they make it. This letter is basically saying that this is the plan, the architecture plan to make Black people hate each other. And I do not think that we are as simple as that. You could create and tell people, you can make a speech and inform some white people, and then all of a sudden those white people are going to implement that and control us. Don't believe that whatsoever. So I honestly feel like it's one of those tools, another one of those tools like Illuminati, or just something to make you think about it and control your mind. It's like, oh, white people are in control, those type things. So it's more so a control mechanism than anything other than that.
I definitely agree with what you're saying. When you started talking about we aren't that simple, it brought me back to the summary part at the end of the address. It went more into depth, and I was actually confused as to where that information came from, who wrote that information, because some of the vocabulary and the concepts seemed to be advanced for 1712, but that's not really relevant. In that summary section, or that synopsis section, they talked about creating this situation where the Black woman is so in fear for her Black male children that she would basically reverse the roles and make the girls strong and independent and make the boys weak and dependent. And I think that shows you that there's definitely a lack of understanding of Black people, because I don't think having the girls be weak, independent, and not strong and independent actually tracks with our actual history. I think it was customary for both the girls and the boys, the males and the females, to be strong and independent and be able to contribute to the society in a multitude of ways. Like, that's how we work. And yeah, on the flip side, there are some issues, I think, with the way we raise our Black males and the way we socialize them and teach them to interact with the world. But just saying that it was a reverse to make the girls strong and independent shows a very basic, rudimentary perspective that is not nuanced enough to actually understand this population of people that you are allegedly speaking on. So if we were to take this letter at face value, or if we were to at least acknowledge that there's some validity to it, what do you think are some of the current manifestations of these tenets in the Willie Lynch Letter?
Well, one of the things that stood out to me that could prove valid from the symptoms suggested in the Willie Lynch Letter would be the rearing of Black male children, and speaking about how in the letter it speaks about how the slaver would basically destroy the strongest, for lack of a better word, buck on the plantation, the strongest individual physically. They would do some crazy things, so I don't even want to get into the details. And basically to instill fear in the rest of the enslaved Africans, they would, in addition to beating or killing that strongest male, they would beat all the other males to the point of near death, so no one would even consider rebelling. So at this point, we have a bunch of black men who appear to fear rebelling, who appear to fear fighting against the oppressor. And this could possibly stem from their parents fearing what could happen to them in this world, so protecting them in some form or matter, coddling them. Then you also have the age divide that has always struck me. For some odd reason, older people and the youth do not see eye to eye, do not get along, do not work together. Maybe within family we might do something, but when it comes to community, there's nothing facilitated between the old and the young. And I don't know if that extends from the Willie Lynch letter, but I definitely do see that in our community today. And of course, you have the infamous skin divide, something that I honestly feel like was put into our minds by white people. We've always had, even back in the continent before white people were introduced to our gene line, we've had different melanin contents. It's not like we were all just dark skinned like we have this thought of in Africa. That's not the case. So they put in our heads that lighter was better because it was supposedly closer to them. And then we would move forward with it and, okay, think lighter is better, black is darker. Darker is worse. And that possibly could be something that extends from the Willie Lynch letter.
I think that a lot of the stuff that we see in our community, that we see as negative, that we see as anti-progress, a lot of that stuff is being in this society, I think. I don't think it comes from the Willie Lynch letter. Like, if you think about team light skin versus dark skin, and then you talk about the brown paper bag test, you talk about how people had to process their hair to get jobs. A lot of these things are the result from just trying to make it in this society. It's easy for the white people to stay in power because they're willing to rape, pillage, murder, kill. So if black people are not going to be like that, then to survive, we try to get in line. I don't think that's the Willie Lynch letter. I don't think that's from slavery. I think that's just, it is what it is. I think one of the things that Art talked about that's real to me is this idea of coddling black males. One thing he didn't talk about was the lack of respect and accountability for the other members of the community. But I think that is a result of disruption of the familial units. Generally the woman is still there, the mom is still there, the grandmother is still there. Where are the males? The males are in prison, dead, in the military, all these different places. I honestly think that a lot of stuff that we see is just what happens when you live in a society where the oppressor has a lot of control over your life. But to say it goes all the way back to slavery, I don't know. I'm not convinced. I feel like if this letter is supposed to have so much control, there's always been so much resistance to it. So this whole psychological component, I don't think is really had that big of an effect. I think we just give them entirely too much power. I think a lot of the stuff is within ourselves. A lot of people don't want to be real and talk about self-hatred and self-loathing. They always want to point the finger. And it's just like when you're pointing the finger outside, you're not working on that stuff inside. You're allowed to have insecurities. You're allowed to not understand things and to be afraid of change and what's different. But then when you take your agency away from yourself, because psychological is in your mind. Of course, like I talked about with the rat experiment and the projects, like a lot of these things, they can become very pervasive and it could, affect your chemistry because it's just so much trauma and stress that you're dealing with on a regular basis. But I just can't give it that amount of power. I can't give it my seal of any kind of approval saying that I think that this strategy actually worked, because I've just seen so much resistance, which is something I feel like we don't really talk about. We don't really talk about how often we fought and how much we fought and how we've been successful on many different levels. I think the real issue comes into play is when we get comfortable. That's when things don't change.
Got you. So you and I have had this discussion before, basically the discussion of the effects of slavery and if those effects are still existing to this day. So I'll ask you, how do you think generationally we will react, or how it would generationally affect us witnessing these atrocities? The things like the man being tied to the horse and ripped apart, the things like being beat to near death and basically going right back into your community after being beat to near death. Like, how would these things affect us moving into the future?
Well, I think, honestly, if you're talking about the atrocities of slavery and the tenets of the Willie Lynch Letter, I think those are two separate topics. Like, I certainly believe that you can cause this level of trauma that can become ingrained in your DNA strand. If you look at, current mental health, people talk about PTSD all the time. PTSD for many reasons. They originally thought that it just came from war, but it comes from experiencing trauma. If we think about evolution, if we think about how we adapt to our environments, to our circumstances, then yes, I think that our DNA sequence could include that trauma to basically smarten up the next generation to avoid that or to survive. Yes, I believe that, but I feel like when we're talking about these tenets and we're talking about these things that are allegedly psychological, I feel like even with the physical trauma and all of that, we've persevered and we've shown so much resilience across time. And I think people like to focus on the negative things, but people never really look at the positive things. We've done a significant amount of community building. If you think of, just the period after slavery ended. Black people were building communities at such a rapid speed and they were so well functioning, efficient, and self-sustaining, but no one talks about that. We're strong and resilient people, and we should definitely never, put our issues away, hide them away, sweep them under the rug. We are the original people. Trauma is going to happen, whether it be natural or man-made, and we have time and time again shown that we can take that trauma and build upon it and make ourselves out to be better even than we were in the past.
Yeah, that's a great answer, great response. Nothing I could really say to that, but just to hop on it and piggyback. Great point. Thinking about us after slavery, the Reconstruction era, they had to develop the Klans just to slow down our progress. All the things we were doing, of course, you had the Black Wall Street that they dropped bombs on. You have all of these neighborhoods and communities they had to build highways in. And these are things that have happened after slavery. These are not Willie Lynch syndrome stuff. This is perpetual whiteness, perpetual white supremacist thought, I like to call it. So yeah, you're right. It's not all based in slavery like a lot of us like to do and a lot of us like to think about. It's a lot of real new stuff going on as well. To close on the Willie Lynch Letter, my biggest thoughts are some of the things I talked about at the very beginning, as in the key premise behind the letter, which was to cause distrust amongst our people and to believe in the system, believe in the slaver's mentality. But we're bigger than that, and we have to continue to be bigger than that and understand that we're always going to have differences. Everyone's not going to see the same, think the same, operate the same. People are going to have their own preferences. Household preferences, don't even have to get too deep into it, but people are going to have their own preferences. That does not mean we can't work together. That does not mean you can't trust this brother or sister. We really have to come to the conclusion that we're working on the same front line against the same enemy. And until we recognize that, we're going to still have these issues. But ultimately, to resolve that, we just have to come to the conclusion that they want us divided. They want us to not trust each other. And as long as we understand that, then we can work towards solving the problem. But yeah, the problem is the distrust for each other, the self-hatred as an individual, not even the hatred of your community. There's a lot of self-hatred that exists within each individual that we need to get rid of. Learn to meditate, learn to take better care of yourself and appreciate yourself more. Those are some of the things that we need to attack in attacking these Willie Lynch Letter syndrome tendencies. So yeah, just go harder, work towards your passions, work towards taking care of your family, your community, and work together, point blank, period.
All very true. My last thoughts on the Willie Lynch Letter is that we give other people way too much of our power. And I think if we knew that we have all the power in the world, there's no way anyone could control us. I'm going to end this segment with a song called Steady Profits from SU the Guru.
Steady profits, making profit, bang for the cost, then we hit the spot rocket. Mind like rockets, off to the stars. Never gonna stop this ride till we gone. About liberation, never a time. So when you see me on top, we on. Ride till we gone. Yo, we gon' ride till we gone. Hard work and focus stays in motion, especially when I'm still. Mine steadily be going. Water I be pouring, that's to keep me hydrated. Usually on a kite, rarely ever get intoxicated. Though I stay faded, hear it through the treble. They knocking my bass, the whole hood's in trouble. So I takes my place amongst villains who praying for my demise, cause they know I'm about freedom, justice and equality, all about the people. Never be poor, I'm a rich, righteous teacher. The people need help, so I grind 25/8, making big meals to fill many plates. Gotta help each other or we gon' be a state. People turning on each other cause we living in greed. Gotta raise our children better to be all they can be, or they might be in the army aiming at you and me. Steady profits, making profit, bang for the cost, then we hit the spot rocket. Mind like rockets, off to the stars. Never gonna stop this ride till we gone. About liberation, never a time. So when you see me on top, we on. Ride till we gone. Yo, we gon' ride till we gone. Riding in my own lane, never been a lame. Make moves how I want, I'm a king. Defender of the truth, and that's my enemy. It's lying to my folk, I'ma take you out the game. Many of us broke, why you glorify the rich? People strung out, you promote flipping bricks. We got a complex, man, my people is sick. Numb your pain with cane, money temporary fix. Perpetuate the hit, self-destructive rhymes you spit. What about our black youth having common sense? But most of these rappers really dumb, I should understand. The oppressor's best weapon is the oppressed man. Black skin, white mask, ass Franz Ferdinand. People hating on themselves like Adolf Hitler. Who's on the next Schindler? We fall in your timber, make them hear as well, so they say we never fell. Steady profits, making profit, bang for the cost, then we hit the spot rocket. Mind like rockets, off to the stars. Never gonna stop this ride till we gone. About liberation, never a time. So when you see me on top, we on. Ride till we gone. Yo, we gon' ride till we gone. We kill each other daily. Hopelessness, that's the wrong way to think, cause we built this hit. Start with the slave labor, take it further back to the writings on the pyramids, they copycat. Tell me what's a Sakara, that's the first plane. Carolina, first in flight, please give me a break. Y'all done broke me off a piece of that whip crack lie. Tell us we ain't done nothing, so we might as well die. That line gon' fly around my way, trail to the truth. Take oppressors out their misery, raising great youth, fertilizing with their history. God is within, we eliminate a mystery. Ride for the most high, never gonna stop this grind. Make it happen for my people, cause I know we divine. It's all in your heart and your mind. Stop wasting time and get on your grind. Get your mind right. Steady profits, making profit, bang for the cost, then we hit the spot rocket. Mind like rockets, off to the stars. Never gonna stop this ride till we gone. About liberation, never a time. So when you see me on top, we on. Ride till we gone. Yo, we gon' ride till we gone. That's to the guru. Good evil Lord up in here. That's how we do it. Get your book game up. Get on some scholarly Dr. King, John Henry Clark, Marcus Garvey, Francis Cress Wilson, Noam Chomsky. You know what I mean? Fred Hampton, Malcolm Pop. Steady profits.
That was Steady Profits by SU the Guru. Thanks again to Art for leading today's discussion. If you have any comments, leave a comment in the comment section. Remember to like and share this video and subscribe to our channel. That was the Blackprint, and this is MJ, sending you love, peace, and ammunition.